Welcome to Big Blend Radio's first third Tuesday Go Natchitoches show. Founded in 1714, Natchitoches is the original French colony and the oldest city in Louisiana. And I'm telling you, the downtown is charming, it's historic, it's beautiful, and it runs along Cane River Lake. Why it's a river lake, we're going to get to that in a little bit. But also, we're going to talk about the Cane River National Heritage Trail. Natchitoches is home to the Cane River Creole National Historical Park, the Cane River National Heritage Area, and it's also the final destination on the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail. I encourage you to go to the Natchitoches website, which is natchitoches.com. You can also find more on nationalparktraveling.com. But for those of you who have maybe never been to Natchitoches, Natchitoches is not, it's spelled differently than what it sounds like. It is natchitoches.com is the website to go to. Today's show, as I was saying, we're going to focus on the Cane River National Heritage Area, the Heritage Trail, excuse me, and that is something Nancy and I have actually toured and done on our travels. Nancy's not here today because today, as we record this, we're in the backwoods of Florida with very little internet, but we're making this work. The Cane River Heritage Trail is actually a Louisiana scenic byway, and it runs along Cane River Lake, and it links to the Al Revel Trail, the El Camino Real de los Tejas National Historic Trail. I hope I'm pronouncing all of this correctly. And the Longleaf Trail and Cosachi National Forest, which is on the outskirts. It's really a beautiful area. If you go to Louisiana, if you don't go to Natchitoches and explore no man's land, got to get to that too, you're going to miss out because they also have meat pies. I'm just saying, and a whole bunch of good food. They, in fact, have their own gas station eats food trail. I'm just saying, there's history, there's food, there's rivers, there's outdoor adventure. It is an awesome, and a lot of music too. So we have four special guests joining us on today's show. We're going to start with Arlene Gould and Kelly West from the Natchitoches Convention and Visitor Bureau. Their website is at natchitoches.com. So welcome, Arlene. How are you doing?
Very good. Thank you, Lisa.
Good to have you back on here. And Miss Nancy says hello. See, I'm saying Miss Nancy now just because you guys are on the show. Right? It's like Miss everything. But Southern hospitality is alive and well in Natchitoches. It really is.
Absolutely. And you all need to come back for another visit sometime soon. I know it's been a while, but you're always welcome.
It's been a year, Arlene, because I know this is airing the second Tuesday and we're only a couple days away from that. But it seems like, the third Tuesday, excuse me, we'll get this straight as we get this launched. But it seems that we always land in Natchitoches in July, the warmest time of year. It's the perfect time.
You have warm or hot?
Well, no, it's a little sweaty, but you've got breweries that have cold beer and you've got a river and a lake. You got a Red River and the Cane River Lake. So, no complaints.
That's right.
And you got big trees. That's the other thing. Big oak trees. So,
lots of them.
Yeah, really beautiful. So welcome back and welcome, Kelly. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I just got back from vacation, so I'm doing really good.
Where did you go?
We did a road trip. We went over from Louisiana over to Georgia, up through Tennessee, and then back down.
Right on. So you kept with the Southeast spirit going. I love that. I love it. And we also have Logan Schlater. Did I say it correctly?
You did.
Logan was our walking tour guide of historic Natchitoches, which is the downtown area, is a National Historic Landmark. And I swear this is one of the best walking tours you can. I think it's the first thing everyone should do is when they get to Natchitoches, go on this walking tour.
Yeah.
And how much does it cost to do this? Because you really give us a lot of history.
It's free. 5-finger discount. It's free.
Really? Because you get so much information and you get to, walk by restaurants and go, I want to go there next, around the downtown, the river. But Natchitoches, you really gave Nancy and I know Kelly, you were with us too. It was just, you get this understanding of Natchitoches, but also no man's land and how interesting history has been, all the changes. Churchill's involved in Spain and France and all these countries are involved in the settling of Louisiana. But there was that gap of time where no man's land came out and said, we got no law and order for a few years. We can do whatever, right? So I want to get back to the tour, but that to me is the very first thing we should all do when coming to Natchitoches. Arlene, Kelly, would you agree? That's one of the first things,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
I
Absolutely.
tell visitors that all the time when they come in, I'll say, the tour's at 10. It's a great place to start because once you take the tour, you could definitely then from there know, okay, I want to go see more of that, or I want to go eat there, or I want to go do that, or learn more about this part of it. It's a great introductory, just
It's
overview of Natchitoches.
it's historic too. So the history is to get an idea of the history, and you really do a good job of getting it into, people like me, we need help. And you do a good job of getting it in our brains
Thank you.
and so we can understand. Kelly, are you drinking one of those daiquiris? I saw
No,
that
I'm
straw.
not.
You
Not-
guys have
it's-
drive-through daiquiris.
It's
I'm just
not
asking.
5 o'clock here yet, though.
But
Oh,
you
it's
have
5 o'clock somewhere, Miss Kelly.
Yeah, listen. We're sharing the same time zone right now. I can't even misbehave either. But Logan, the National Heritage Area, am I right? It's like 115,000 acres of history.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
Okay.
On the dot almost. Yeah. 115,000.
Wow. And so it's a nonprofit, but it's like everyone coming together, and it is connected to the Park Service, the National
Yes,
Park
ma'am.
Service. We've got Barbara joining us next year. But it's really incorporating the whole area. So is it all of Natchitoches Parish, or how far does it
No,
go?
so it's the stretch that runs, the way that I tend to look at it is that it goes from Fort Jessup in the west down to Monet's Ferry in the southeast,
Oh,
which is that 116,000 acres of land and waterways that have kind of shaped the people that live here, and in turn the people have also shaped the land pretty much.
oh, okay. So that's pretty big. And then you've got your visitor center, which is the Grand Decor, where we went to visit as well
Yes, ma'am.
after we did our walking tour, and you overlooked the Red River. So,
Yeah. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers does a very good job of picking beautiful locations to put their visitor centers.
it is beautiful. It's beautiful. And so there's the Red River, and then we have Cane River Lake. And then I've read all this. It's an oxbow of the lake or river, and I don't quite get all that stuff. But then some people are arguing. If you read stuff online, people are having this war of what's going on with the river. Is it a lake? But isn't it actually like a tributary of Red River?
So it's actually the original channel, dating back to the 1700s when the French first arrived. It existed for quite a while, and it was the main channel until the late 1800s, after the Red River Raft was removed, which was a massive series of log jams that stretched from Natchitoches to the Arkansas border, about 160 miles of naturally occurring log jams. Those were removed over the course of the 1830s, 40s, 50s, 60s, all the way into the 1890s when it was finished. But as a result, the river began to shift, and it abandoned the main channel, creating the channel that we have today, which circumnavigated all of Natchitoches and our associated plantations. So that was a big shakeup in the late 1800s for Natchitoches. But we exist as an oxbow lake. Eventually, there was a dam put in by the city of Natchitoches and by the Civilian Conservation Corps in the 1930s to create the 36 square mile recreational lake that we have today.
And you can go on the Cane River Queen. You can go on a paddle boat and look at everybody in their houses going out on their docks and fishing and having a good time, or just float down and see all the birds and the wildlife. It's beautiful. It's a really good experience. And so I also know that area goes over to the Oakland Plantation. For those who are watching versus listening, the photo behind me is right outside Oakland Plantation. So Oakland Plantation is part of the Cane River Creole National Historical Park. Magnolia Plantation is also part of that, not to be confused with the Melrose Plantation. So there's a lot of history going on in a lot of plantations. This is an agricultural area, but we're going to welcome Barbara Justice from the National Park Service. Welcome, Barbara. How are you?
I am very good. I'm just pleased to be joining you today.
It is great to have you here. And I know you're not on video with us because you really are out in the backwoods of the Natchitoches Parish. In fact, I know you're in the backwoods because Arlene took us out there and showed us a juke joint that is covered by trees and brambles and all kinds of stuff. So you really are in the backwoods.
And I love history, but I do struggle with technology. I will admit that.
Oh, no. It's the internet is the internet of what it is. But so where are you today? Are you at Oakland or Magnolia Plantation?
I am at Oakland Plantation today.
Okay.
pointed out, the park consists of two plantation sites, Oakland and Magnolia, along Cane River and Cane River Lake. So these are two Creole plantation sites. We are the only national park site that tells the story of the unique Creole culture.
And so the only one, because a lot of people will think maybe when you go to New Orleans, and that's the thing too. Arlene's from New Orleans, so I know you represent all on that. But this is the thing. Whenever I tell people about Natchitoches, they're always like, "Oh, I thought New Orleans was the oldest." And so Natchitoches, it's kind of I have to go through the education process and say, well, this is where you go for that real, Creole heritage experience. Of course, there's Cajun too that's in your area. But so you're the only place in the state or in the country for
The only national park site
wow.
that specifically was created to tell the story of the unique Creole culture. Certainly not the only place in Louisiana you can learn about Creole culture, but the
Yes.
only national park site.
Okay, and then it's also, as I remember, Oakland Plantation being a bicentennial farm, so it's also telling the war history, Civil War history too. It's telling farming history, so it's kind of running the gamut because it's an old plantation.
Oh, yes. We tell a very long history at both Oakland and Magnolia. They are both bicentennial farms. As far as we know, they're the only bicentennial farms west of the Mississippi River. And all that means is these two plantation sites were owned by only one family at Oakland and one family at Magnolia for their entire existence of more than 200 years. That's quite unusual for a family to be able to maintain a plantation for that length of time. But the owners, the planters, aren't the only ones that have long associations with these plantation sites. Many of the workers, first enslaved and then sharecropper, were on these plantations for generations as well. So we do tell a long story from the founding of these plantations in the 1700s up through the end of the sharecropping period into the civil rights movement.
Right. And now you see what's going on in the world now. The civil rights is still an issue, and we're still working through that as a country. And I think it's important to go to sites like Cane River Creole National Historical Park to get some understanding. As I recall, Melrose Plantation has also, isn't it some of the oldest brick slave quarters in the country?
Yes, Magnolia Plantation has 8 remaining brick slave tenant cabins, so somewhat unusual to have brick cabins. The more typical cabins are wood or wood and bousillage, that mud mixed with animal hair and Spanish moss, typical Creole building material. But there are 8 remaining brick cabins at Magnolia Plantation that were built in the mid 1840s.
It's really a diverse experience going to the park, and the two plantations are spread out away from each other, not that far. It's a beautiful area to tour and drive. Logan, so this is all part of the Heritage Trail, right? So the Heritage Trail
Yes,
kind of
ma'am.
follows. I know you have this beautiful brochure. I know we have it somewhere in all of our information in the car. But the whole Heritage Trail, can you give us kind of an overview? So, because I know it goes from like downtown, and then you can go through Cane River Creole National Historical Park. And I think we got lost that one night, Arlene, Nancy, and I, calling you up.
Yes, I think you did.
I think
That
we
can
went
be
to
I think
the
you
end.
did.
I think we went to Casachi National Forest one night by accident. I didn't use GPS.
It was very late and very dark.
Yep.
Yep. So our trail stretches from technically the Allen exit of I-49, comes down through the Spanish portion of the Creole community here, which is what we call the West Side. And that crosses with Los Adayas State Historic Site, St. Anne's Church, stretches a little bit out to Fort Jessup, which is talking more about the early American presence here in the 1820s up until about the 1840s. And then you head back towards Natchitoches, where you hit the Natchitoches Downtown District, which has got a variety of architectural styles and cultural traditions that have blended together over the last 300 years. And then you have what we call downriver, which is when you start following the actual Cane River Lake as it snakes through the landscape. and you end up with 2 national park sites. Melrose is the 3rd plantation that's open to the public, but you've got a variety of churches, other plantations that are privately owned still, and other historic sites that really lay the foundation for what Cane River National Heritage Area is, and that is a cultural destination.
It is cultural, and that includes the food. I'm just saying,
Oh,
you've
yeah.
got so many cultures that come together. You're going to have good food, but also, traveling that whole area. Arlene, isn't this also part of your Natchitoches movie trail in the Steel Magnolias Trail? Because I swear you showed us where Robert Harling's house was at one point. I'm not sure
We
we're allowed to
did. That
tell
is
everybody.
Yep, it is along the trail. And yes, even at Oakland Plantation, which is the national park unit there at Cane River Creole National Historical Park at Oakland, is where John Wayne filmed The Horse Soldiers. And they also used the driveway at what is now Robert Harling's home. It's an older plantation oak lawn. There's oak land and oak lawn plantations, and so yeah, that's along the way, and of course, other movies filmed in the area as well.
And Steel Magnolias, Kelly, that's a big deal. You guys have that. You have 2 film trails now, right?
Well, we have the Steel Magnolias film tour that actually the Heritage Area helps produce that brochure that we give out here at the Visitor Center, and we have that information on our website. But then we took that plus the other locations and made the Natchitoches Film Trail so that someone could pick up the film trail and be able to do all the films. Because like the Horse Soldiers, for instance, is right in the middle. A lot of those sites are right in the middle of the Steel Magnolia filming sites as well. Because a lot of the Steel Magnolia filming sites are in downtown in the historic district, but then there's some downriver, like at St. Augustine Catholic Church, where she had her wedding. It does not look how it looks in the movie because they really did drape it in blush and bashful. Yep. But if you stand out on the front steps and turn around to look at the river, you'll see the wrought iron arch where Drum is standing when Shelby comes out to tell him that it's time, Daddy, it's time. So, so you can see things like that, right there, right along the Heritage Trail.
And also when you talk about St. Augustine, I mean, that's a very iconic church that is. And isn't it even the building of it and everyone coming together and that's part of the Isle Brevel. Am I saying that correctly? Isle Brevel?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that's Isle Brevel Trail, and it's the community itself, but also Clementine Hunter is buried there. And, that ties back to Melrose Plantation. And that's, and even the Matoyers, is that right? Am I getting this right, Miss Arlene?
Yeah.
It's Matoye.
Matoye, I knew I was going to get something wrong.
But it looks like Matoyer.
Yeah. So that connects back to the entire family. And they were very instrumental in the building of the church of St. Augustine.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is huge history, and I think you could spend 2 weeks in Natchitoches and never finish it. When you think about all the families. One thing I know, when the last time we were in Natchitoches was, or maybe well, we just keep going back. We're like bad pennies. But it's a place to go for genealogy, and we still have to do a show on this because for family history, this is huge. Logan, is this part of because of having the Red River? That this was almost like a port area at one point, maybe.
Yeah, so having access to the Red River, which itself ties into the Mississippi, which then ties into New Orleans and to the rest of the world. We were the northernmost inland point that the French really had. They had outposts along the Mississippi River, but the Red River, this is the farthest that they came north. And so being the only major settlement up here, you have a lot of history that kind of gets stored here over the years. In fact, we have 5 genealogy libraries in Natchitoches that serve as different focal points of records. The 2 really large ones, or the 3 really large ones, are Cami G. Henry Research Center, which acts as a repository for all kinds of information for the people of here in Natchitoches, be it maps or genealogies or audio recordings of languages. You have the Natchitoches Genealogical and Historic Association, which is in the old Courthouse Museum, which is right smack dab in the middle of the historic district. And then you have kind of close by, right across the street, is the Bishop Martin Museum, which has, in my opinion, some of the coolest records because they are Catholic baptismal records that date back to 1724,
Wow.
Which how they operated back then. The enslaved peoples were baptized into the Catholic faith. So we actually have some slave records that date back to the early 1700s, which is something we here in the United States don't have a whole lot of.
I was going to say
paper.
that's rare. That's really
Yes.
rare and hard to find. Wow. So this is a destination for those trying to trace back, to get that information. That's incredible. And also just going into, being that connection with the waterways, going back to Oakland Plantation and Magnolia Plantation, Barbara, it's such an important thing because these are plantations and you're having goods and the goods need to get out. You can grow all you want, but you got to get the stuff out. So Barbara, I think Magnolia Plantation is really, well, both are fascinating. Oakland, you really show there's the plantation house, but you also actually get to see what a working farm looks like. And also go into like the kitchen goes all the way to the 1950s or 60s, as I recall. But Magnolia, you have that cotton ginny that I think is one of the last ones you can find in this country.
Yes, we are very fortunate at Magnolia to have the cotton engine and press barn with cotton ginning and pressing equipment that really runs the whole 19th century, from an 1830s wood screw cotton press that was powered either by mules or possibly human power to compress the cotton into those 400 to 500 pound bales ready for market. And you're absolutely right. The rivers were key. The rivers were the highway of the day. So you had to have access to rivers to get supplies in and to get your goods out to market. So they would, press those 400, 500 pound bales of cotton and then load them onto wagons and take them to landing and load them onto steamboats and send them down to market in New Orleans. But we also have in that same gin barn, ginning and pressing equipment that's steam powered from the 1870s and 1880s. So you can see, that evolution of mechanization. All within that one building.
I remember when we went there and filmed with Nathan Hatfield, who was working there at the time, and going in and filming and going where the mules go around in a circle. And Nancy made me run around. She's like, get out there, be the mule. But you start to really realize, how it worked. But you also have the famous blacksmith shop, which is fascinating with it's almost like you've got a bunch of pictographs on the barn walls. It's like, that was like from what I understood, the coffee shop of the area where everybody came and talked politics and what was going on. The blacksmith shop was super important.
Oh, absolutely. Blacksmith shops, carpenter shops tended to be the first buildings constructed on a plantation because you need them to build everything else and to, constantly maintain all your tools, all your equipment. So yes, the blacksmith was a very important figure on the plantation.
And then, okay, going back to the highway part, what are those old gas pumps doing on the edge of Oakland Plantation? They wouldn't fill up my car. I almost had to call Arlene and say help.
Well, after the Civil War, slavery as we know it is no more. So the cotton planters still wanted to grow their cotton. They no longer had enslaved workers to plant it and pick it. So they went to their newly freed people and eventually arranged what's called sharecropping, where you could continue to live in the cabins you had lived in when you were enslaved on the plantation. You worked a portion of the land, and when the crop came in, you got a share of the money. But these are people who, weren't paid.
So, well, but they weren't paid, but you could live on the land, right? Uh-oh, did we lose her? Did Barbara go away?
We are having some storms here in Natchitoches.
So are we, where we are in Florida. So we're all going to just blow up. I don't know. But yeah, so that you want to pick up for her,
Yeah.
Logan?
There she goes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Are you
So
back?
the
Is she back? Barbara, are you back?
No, I think we lost her.
no, I
Okay.
think
She
we lost her.
Okay.
So what she was talking about with sharecropping and tenant farming, while you did live in the same place, and the money that you were paid in was not real money. If you've ever been to an arcade today, you put your money into a machine, and the arcade gives you a bunch of worthless little pieces of whatever metal they've got, and you put those in the machines, and that's how you play your games, right? The same way worked back then. When you got your money from the sharecropping, it wasn't in money. They didn't pay you in real legal U.S. tender. You were paid in what's called scrip, which is fake currency, like a voucher that you take to the general store of the plantation that you're living on, and you exchange that for goods. The big sticking point here is that they control the plantation owner, the landowner, dictated how much you got paid, and also dictated the prices at the store. And those prices and what you were paid never really worked out. No, we're not really cool at all. It turns into what we call de facto slavery, pseudo slavery. You're not getting out.
It's kind of like being in the prison system. It's like if you're in jail, what you have to live on, you need those supplies in there, and you need to have cash, and it's kind of dictated. I'm just saying, but it is true. And I do want to tell people, we have a really good video interview we did with Mr. Elvin Shields over at Oakland Plantation, because his family's cabin is actually there. Their sharecropping cabin is there. And it's a really good, it's right by the overseer's cabin. But it's a really good idea of what his family lived through, and sharecroppers they were also Caucasian sharecroppers, I've been finding out.
Yes. It started out as kind of the former plantation hands working the fields, and then slowly but surely, everyone who couldn't really find a job anywhere else found a job at a plantation. Didn't matter who you were.
Is this something that comes from the aftermath of the Civil War? That
Yes.
kind of, like, now what? Now we have to start over, kind of.
Yes. So the way I usually put it, you need three things to make a plantation work. You need a cash crop that you can grow every year, preferably. You need a lot of land, which these plantations had, but you need free labor. You can't pay for your labor, because if you do, it takes too many hands to work that much land. So with the end of slavery, you get sharecropping and tenant farming. The idea is it breaks the plantation up into smaller, more manageable farm units, all with still the same owner. So it just it makes the new situation work for them better, but it doesn't make anything better for the workers.
Wow. So the history is there. And I think what's fascinating about going to Natchitoches is you do get that cultural perspective and people getting along. I mean, I really want to go back to the folk festival. Kelly, is it coming back next year?
Well, there's been mixed notes. We were told, yes, they were coming back in 2022, but then we were also told it's still not for sure yet, that they were still kind of keeping an eye on the landscape of things.
Yeah, and things are still, topsy-turvy. We're not 100% in the clear during COVID, so it is important, but
especially here in Louisiana.
The folk festival, I know that Dr. Rasmussen also went out and did a whole video series. I need to catch up with him on that, because they went out and did, documentaries basically on all the performers, and some of them are just the performers there. You're never going to see this again. Like, honestly, what we experienced, and we've got a lot of footage, and we've been waiting for you guys to have it back again so we can put it out there. But I think we need to just get out, because that footage, those the performers, I mean, there's nothing like it. I mean, we saw like Victorian dancing, and then down home Cajun music, the blues, we saw everything. So it's special. And I think that's the thing. It's how Natchitoches has grown through the years. I mean, the centuries, right, Logan? Like, the history here is so deep and so multicultural, and how everyone's coming back together to do all these events and great food. Kelly, the other good thing is the gas station, eats food trail. I know we put up your press release, and people are like, well, we got to go. And it's like, here it is. Here's your fried food. And I think everybody wants the fried food. I mean, that became a big deal.
Yes, definitely. And that's why we put it together, is when we were talking about that no man's land area in those 7 parishes, and what was one thing that kind of tied us all together. And it was very much a moving along of the trail and food. And a lot of the food came back to gas station and convenience store food. And because we do have some really good food options, whether they're serving boudin or it's a meat market in a gas station, whether it's meat pies or zawali tamales that are served, or whether it's just good burgers or fried fish or wings or pizzas that are made in these gas stations that really do serve the community. You know, they may not be close enough to a restaurant, or while out at some of the gas stations, we ran into workers who, you know, they were like, oh, y'all are covering the gas station. Oh, let me tell you where to go. Because they stop for gas, they grab a quick bite, and they're on the road again, or they're back out in the field, or they're back out working on power lines, or whatever the case may be. It's a working man's lunch, and you get a nice filling lunch for not a whole lot of money, and you can stop right there and grab everything you need and be ready to move on for the rest of your day.
But it is actually part of the cultural cuisine, because you know, I remember in Lake Charles filming boudin being made, and dude, when they have their boudin wars, that video, everybody starts carrying on, and people want the recipe. I'm like, dude, he's not going to give you the recipe. It's not happening. It ain't happening. It's like no one's going to give up their meat pies. As Lazions, am I saying this correctly yet? Lazions, they're not going to give out their meat pie recipe. Hell no. You know, so it's a special thing.
Exactly. And that's the thing about these gas stations too. If you look at who's working there, a lot of times it is the moms and the grandmas, or it's a family that owns it, and their family members are the ones back there. And so they've developed these recipes over time. It's a family recipe. It's kind of like going to your grandma's house to eat. And so, you know, there's not necessarily recipes to go along with these things. It is very much just, you know, a handed down recipe through the years. And that's just how they make it. And that's how you get it on your plate.
It's, I dig it. I mean, he was saying that the boudin is like, this is, you know, he says the rest of the country may take around donuts for the sales calls that they make. Like a salesperson will go out, take donuts. He's like, in Louisiana, in Southwest Louisiana, we're taking boudin balls, you know, and it's like everybody, you know, or sausage, however you want to make it, because it's done in so many ways. Meat pies up in Natchitoches, you know, zawali tamales, like you were saying. However, we did have really good beignets at Cypress Bend Resort. So I'm like, okay, take that, New Orleans. Good luck with that. But you guys, I mean, and then you've got drive-through daiquiris. I mean, you're set. What more do you want?
A little bit of everything.
It is. But I think what's great is that you've got this history, and you've also got the part of this trail is the cultural part. You've got the food. There's shopping along the way. The downtown Natchitoches is really cool. You've got the arts going on, but you've also got the outdoors and nature. I mean, you can go on boat rides. I know you love kayaking, you know, Kelly. You know, Arlene's going on the boat ride. We're going to have wine. You know, Logan's going to take us walking and really give us the architectural history, which is also really unique, because you also have like Victorian buildings going on in downtown Natchitoches. And then what's going on with the Roke House down at the riverfront? Because I saw some renovation or something happening. What's happening with that, Logan?
So the Rock House is currently in discussion.
Excuse me.
No, you're good.
I need a
Depends on where you're
Natchitoches
from, how you
lesson
say it.
on how to pronounce everything.
So you may have seen something more on the Badon Rock House, or the Baden Rock House, which is further downriver, built in the same style, a little bit smaller house, but they're in the process of trying to fix that house up and make sure that it's still structurally sound. But we are also, funnily enough, in talks to do that with the Rock House as well. We're talking, trying to stabilize it and make sure that it lasts another 200 plus years, like it has so far.
So they were all moved onto the riverfront. They weren't there originally.
Right. The Rock House was moved there in the 60s, in the late 60s.
Wow.
As a way to showcase that architectural style.
Wow. It's amazing. And downtown, I want to give a shout out, because you've got your own fort downtown. Arlene, like,
Yes,
how did you get that?
Well, you're talking about Fort St. Jean Baptiste?
I just want to make sure somebody else pronounced it.
You tricked me. Well, that's how Natchitoches was established as a trading post. They set up the trading post at the Fort Saint Jean Baptiste, and they found the drawings or renderings at a museum in France, and so brought them back here to Natchitoches and did a replica of the original fort. And it's been open since the early to mid 1980s, and it's a replica of the original fort that established Natchitoches as a trading post.
It's really cool to go there because when you go in the buildings and realize how at one point people all had to kind of bunk up together, and you're going, it's hot out here on the riverfront. What? Why are you doing that? So it's kind of like, yeah, you understand that trading post. And this is also the final destination on the El Camino Real de los Trail. I mean, de los Tejas. That was a royal road, right? At the very beginning.
That was it's now a national trail all the way to Mexico City. But I was laughing, we referred to Natchitoches as the destination of travelers since 1714. But they've been shopping here since 1714 too at the old trading post.
Yeah. Well, you have that sale on the trail every year, every spring. So that's kind of got that thing going. But you're also part of the Jefferson Highway. Now, that's something we haven't done yet, but we got to start talking about the Jefferson Highway. I think Nancy and I are going to be traveling through that again real soon. So
that's always an interesting story that a lot of people do not realize. It was the first intercontinental highway from the north to the south, from Winnipeg, Canada, all the way to New Orleans, all the way through the Louisiana Purchase territory, even older than Route 66, and even before numbered highways. It was It was created when cars were rolling off the assembly line and they didn't have roads to ride on except gravel and dirt roads. So, so they started paving roads, and it was the first intercontinental highway from, like I said, from Winnipeg to New Orleans. The Pine Palms, as they called it.
I know we're going to Ohio soon, so we'll have to go and make sure we get on the road and go, hi, y'all.
It's hey, y'all.
I know.
It's hey, y'all.
Well, it depends. If we go through Kentucky, we have to do hi, y'all. When we go through you, it's hey, y'all. We got to get our highs and hays correct here. It's all good with me. But, and then I don't know, when we get to Canada, they'll go, hey. I don't know what they're going to, and then we can go to Mexico and be hola. But, to me, what's interesting is that connection with all these roads, these historic trails. And you've got to think, the Native American trails, but that's the first one, right, Logan? For everyone in the El Camino Real, that's got to be most Native American than Spanish.
Yeah, for the most part, that was the where the route went was very heavily dictated on where the Spanish were setting up, and the Spanish were setting up next to the Native American tribes. So it kind of travels through their territories. As the Spanish kind of established their missions and their presidios or their forts, all the way until you get to Los Adayas. And then once Natchitoches and Louisiana become part of Spain, the El Camino finally officially, it had been kind of part of the black market trade up until that point. But after 1763, we become part of Spain, and the El Camino just kind of stretches all the way from Los Adayas all the way to Natchitoches.
Wow. And so Los Adayas is that part, because it's a really interesting place, because you can't really see what used to be a fort there, right? It used to be...
Right. You can see how the earth looks, because they did dig some trenches that are still kind of present there today. But for the most part, what you're looking at is the hilltop on which they built the fort. And then if you feel like walking through the hills of West Louisiana, you can go see the Mission Hill, which is where the original mission was back in 1721.
Oh, so it was a mission. Because, we went to a mission on our way to Natchitoches, Texas, because we were doing the El Camino. And Mission Dolores. And they were redoing the mission, but we actually stood where the original mission was. And it was kind of like this. It reminded, and I wonder about this, about where we've done so many forts lately and missions. I'm wondering, are they setting up missions almost with the same mindset of a fort, where you can look out and beyond for protection, just because of where their location is?
The missions typically come first, so they would have preferred it be defensible rather than not. So that's probably part of it. That Spanish architectural style is very, very almost like a miniature fort. No matter what you're building, it always looks kind of fortified and ready to go.
There's going to
especially
be a
during that
place
time
where you can
period.
shoot an arrow through it. It's like, we're going to
Yeah.
get you through there. We're a mission of peace, but I'm going to get you if you step over this line, because they are built that way. It's really interesting to me about how they have that overlook. Los Adeos, is that part of the Cane River Heritage Trail?
Yes, ma'am, that's part of
Wow.
that west side.
And also, you've got the other state park that has a country music museum in there. Is that also part of it?
That is also part of it. That's
Wow.
Preble State Historic Site, which has
Wow.
just recently been reopened in the last couple of months. We're very
Awesome.
happy that that's finally back open
Excellent.
to the public.
Yeah, see, that's another part of the arts. Go ahead, Darlene.
I wanted Logan to remind you that Las Vegas was also once the capital of Texas.
Yes.
See? And so Louisiana claimed it back. Is that what happened?
Yes.
Take that, Texas. We're going to be bigger now.
Once we got the purchase of no man's land in 1821, Los Adeos was firmly cemented in the Louisiana territory.
So now we're really on that 300 mark for no man's land, with it being 2021.
That 200 years.
But you're going to keep celebrating, right? Because that's one thing I know about Natchitoches is that once you start celebrating something, it never ends. Even the pandemic, you may have to. Yeah, Christmas festival, is that back on, Arlene?
Yes, 95th this year. So back on. We're excited about that. So we're planning, and everything's coming along very well. So the lights come on November the 20th. We'll have the parade this year. Of course, we didn't do one last year, and the lights will be on through January the 6th of 2022. So they'll be on from November 20th to January the 6th. So
awesome. Always to Epiphany Day.
On the weekends. And
awesome. Awesome. Yeah. Kelly, before we go, I know you touched on that there are some new things happening for the Park Service. I know Barbara wanted to touch on that, is that you're getting a new visitor bureau, like for a visitor center for the Park Service.
Yeah, so I may let Logan talk about this because the Heritage area is working right alongside the historical park on this project. And so he probably knows more of the details. But yes, we're very excited. The National Park recently moved their warehouse to within the Landmark Historic District downtown. There were some warehouse space available and they needed a bigger space. It is actually next door to our historic train depot, which they will be converting into the National Park Visitor Center there as well. And Logan, any more information about that?
Yeah, so the train depot goes back a long time. It's actually a mixture of Italian and Spanish architecture, since you seemed to like the architecture earlier. It's also a building of segregation. The building was originally built with segregation in mind, where you had white and people of color entrances, which is something that the National Park Service is working to maintain the historic integrity of that and use that as a teaching tool for people who were of the younger generations who don't really understand what it was to grow up during a time period where things weren't as open as they are today.
Right.
Because there's not a lot of architecture, and there's a lot of ideas that maybe we shouldn't keep that architecture. But I think the National Park Service is using it in the right way as a teaching tool, and using that as not only a visitor center, but also as a small museum exhibition to showcase the history of the people of color here in Natchitoches, and what that train station really meant to them. And what it meant was freedom for a lot of people, was to get away from the plantation and make a life for yourself elsewhere, and then come back and bring your family with you. And then as we know today, as the visitor center is very much aware, we have family reunions all the time. We got people coming in from California and Chicago. It's the two big places for us here. And that's where that railway depot went, was to those two places. So
really,
we get family reunions.
That's really interesting, because I know the one lady who has she does the Natchitoches Film Festival, or the Cane River Film Festival. Mm-hmm. She lived in LA. I remember her name, Kelly. I think she's a Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kelly Jackson.
Yeah, they're Resurrection Firm Films. I'm just going off the top of my head here. And I remember in the interview her talking about when she was here, she was in LA, and then she came to do family history. Next thing you know, she moved and started a film festival. Like, it's kind of like, so she was from California. So I don't know if it goes, but her family's, from Natchitoches. And that's why I say this genealogy, like, you're a hub for that, for people to find their roots, and that's so important. And I think the National Park Service, from all the parks we've been to, national parks and state parks, forests. All of their interpretation is about telling the truth and interpreting in a way. So this is what happened. It's not colored. It's not like, oh, we're going to take this out or whatever. This is how
Nope.
it is. And it's so important so that we can have a true and real understanding. So I'm really glad they're doing that with the train depot and
Yep.
moving and also making it in the downtown area because you are a National Historic Landmark. Quick, two other things. I know we've got to not leave out the Louisiana Sports Museum, the Hall of Fame that you've got there. And also
I was going to bring them up.
you got it. Yeah, they're important to visit while you're downtown.
Yeah, so you mentioned Dr. Rasmussen, the folk festival. So we didn't do that this year, but he was able to work very hard to actually pull together a concert series in its place. And that was partnered with the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, Northwest Louisiana History Museum. And so they're doing a concert series. I believe it's every other weekend, right, Miss Kelly?
Oh, awesome.
I think he's got it. It's
Oh, is it
right
every
now
weekend?
scheduled every weekend through the second or third Saturday in August.
Yes, so we've got a whole different types of all different types of music coming into Natchitoches and playing for the people of Natchitoches and kind of exposing everybody to a whole bunch of different stuff. We had Amanda Shaw the first weekend. This weekend, I believe we have a Zydeco performer. I forget his name.
Roy Ledette.
Yes. So while we don't have a folk festival, we still have kind of a mini folk festival this year. And we get more weeks of it, so that's even better.
And they did also publish the video series, Lisa. It's on their YouTube page.
Oh, okay.
So if you search Natchitoches Northwestern Folk Festival on YouTube, you should be able to find all those different videos compiled there.
Because there's one performer in mind, and I'm going to say his name wrong, Victor Goldthwait. Just you've got to see him while you can. Whether it's in video or in person, it's a whole other experience. And that's all I know is that was a highlight of my actual life. Going to that folk festival, Arlene, you knew how
we
it
did.
was.
It was a good fun day. Not only because even though it was in July, it was in that huge air-conditioned Prather Coliseum.
Yeah, it was cool.
At the Northwestern State University, grounds. But the museum is a very nice backdrop for these bands to come in every Saturday to play, for free in the concert series. So we're lucky that we get to have something, to replace the festival itself.
Awesome. And also the one thing you've got the American Cemetery, which is the oldest cemetery in Louisiana. And I saw something, I think it was on your website, everyone, natchitoches.com. So it's natchitoches.com. I saw that they're doing some cemetery tours, it looks like, on weekends.
Yes.
Yep.
The Sports Hall of Fame is doing that. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
No, go ahead. The first Friday of each month in the lunch hour, so 11:30 to 12:30, they're doing complimentary guided tours of the American Cemetery and telling some of those stories. And yes, the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame is kind of spearheading that project as well. Awesome. But it's a great addition to obviously the walking tours that we already have. We have realized that we were just having this conversation, our American Cemetery brochures that we give out. People have always been interested in the cemetery, but ever since the pandemic and being shut down, we were flying through those. I mean, that was one of the brochures we constantly had to replace in our exterior brochure racks on the outside of our office. And so we had somebody the other day saying, oh yeah, by the way, I'm out of those. I need to come by and get some. And we're like, we have them. But in B&B owners and things are in that area have said they've seen a huge increase in just people interested, just walking through the cemetery, taking a look. Obviously the Still Magnolia funeral scene was filmed there as well. So that's another draw into the cemetery, being a filming site. And so it is of huge interest right now. And it is something, and we are very grateful to have the tour now as well, because that does draw in people who as a different type of interest into the cemetery.
Cemeteries are cool. We do them all across the country. I'm going to put up a cemetery map. We're going to do something, because especially over October, we got to do that because really, people travel and you find out it's kind of a reverse way of learning history of a region, is going to the cemeteries and you'll
Yes.
find out, oh, this person did this and this. And you go, I didn't even know. I found the father of the bandstand in Lancaster, Eaton, Pennsylvania. I'm like, I didn't know there was the father of the bandstand. And yes, here it is. And here's this history of the bandstand, So it's going to these sites it's huge. And a lot of people travel by cemetery. That's what they do. And trains.
You mentioned the cemeteries in October. I can tell you that on October the 8th, Natchitoches Historic Foundation will be doing a walking cemetery tour. So
good.
it's very, very popular. So the date this year is a little early. It's October the 8th.
Okay, so the history part, because I know October you have, you've got Taptober, you've got the beer festivals, but a lot of the history comes alive. And this is something, is everyone still wants to socially distance, but I really think it's important to get your kids out to start to understand these areas. And all of the sites that we've been to are well done in regards to interpretation, so kids can understand and have fun with history. So it's really exciting. But thank you all so much for joining us today. It's been
Yes,
great
ma'am.
to regroup with you.
Definitely. Thank you for
Anytime.
having us.
Yeah, now let's give you out your websites. Everyone, natchitoches.com. So it's Nath. No, I can't spell it all. Natchitoches, Natchitoches.com. And also for Cane River National Heritage Area, go to canerivernha.org. For the national parks, for Cane River Creole National Historical Park, you can go to nps.gov/CARI. All of the websites that I'm talking about, you can go to nationalparktraveling.com. Just type in Natchitoches or Cane River and you'll find everyone. And we
Yes,
want to
ma'am.
thank everyone for joining us here on Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Lisa. Take care.
Bye, y'all.